Good morning, afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Supatease video, and Dragonflight is imminent. We are all going to have to make the biggest decision in picking a class and specialization for the next expansion, and I will be releasing video after video covering every single specialization and talking about what is going on with them to see if it's possibly going to be best suited for you. And in today's video, I'm going to be constructing a tier list discussing how excited I am for the ranged DPS specializations, which ones stand out the most to me as being the most fun, because we know balance can come and go. There's an ebb and flow. One spec's on the top in one patch, one spec's on the bottom, but something that stays consistent is fun. So this is probably the most important tier list that you could watch overall. So this is going to be talking about new things the specs are getting. How much room are you going to have to grow on this specialization and explore and expand? Like, how fast are you going to get bored with it, right? Is this something that maybe a week in you're going to just be like, oh, why did I even pick this? And I don't want you to be in that position, right? And if you want to make sure that you're always making the best decision for yourself related to World of Warcraft, then do make sure to hit the subscribe button. Your support is greatly appreciated, and that is the main purpose of the channel, is to keep you well informed and ahead of the competition. So let's get started with these specializations. We've got Affliction Warlock. Now, I really love what they've done with Affliction Warlock moving into Dragonflight. Maybe I personally would have preferred Malefic Rapture to be retired and maybe return back to an old kind of Soulburn Haunt play style that had existed in previous expansions on Warlock, but I do really like a lot of the returning spells, specifically things like Shadow Flame for extra utility and snares, Haunt builds, Drain Soul, Execute, going back to those old school flavors of Affliction Warlock, while also entangling the Soul Rot multi-target Drain Life playstyle of Shadowlands. I think that they did do an excellent job of merging the new with the old and allowing this expansive tree to explore and try different combinations with. It's a phenomenal specialization, feels really awesome, not new player friendly in my opinion, but if you spend some time with it, you're going to be able to grow throughout the entire expansion into one of the most gnarliest players on this specialization. So for me, Affliction Warlock is definitely a spec that I want to be checking out sooner than later for Dragonflight for those main reasons. Balanced Druid. Now, for Balanced Druid, for PvP specifically, they pruned a lot of the things that were quality of life in order to get crowd control onto our opponents. So there's a little bit of frustration there still for me, at least when it comes to PvP. But as a whole for the class, they've expanded it into being much more about Starfall. Now Starfall is going to stack. There's a lot of like astral interactions. You've got a new type of celestial alignment with the orbital strike that can send out this laser beam in a line that applies stellar flare. I'm personally not a big fan of stellar flare. The wild mushrooms will explode beneath their target. You can't choose where they explode. I didn't really like that personally. The Druid tree itself was one of the first talent trees they ever made, and it didn't really receive too many adjustments even since then. And the adjustments that it did receive are not really impactful, at least to the balanced Druid specialization. So I was a bit disappointed. A lot of the talent trees are just kind of like throughput options, passives that proc. It wasn't really that interesting to me. And the ones that aren't passives are maybe not the most desirable talents. So I don't feel like there's a lot to like expand and kind of play with your curiosities too much when it comes to the talent trees. Now, is it going to be a top performer in AoE situations? Of course it is. It's always going to be. It's the balanced Druid. But I'm not exactly the most excited about it anymore, having seen it play out now since all of the balance changes that have gone through, a lot of the cool things that it had. It's not really grabbing me as much as it had in the past, which is kind of maybe tragedy here for those of you that know me as the balanced Druid main. It's kind of like falling for grace for me. I'm sure I'll come back to it just because of my own personal nostalgia and connection to the spec. So I mean, I'll probably play it maybe even as like a second character just because of that, and try to make it work. But it seems kind of just like run around in circles, keep Starfall up, dots on as many targets as you can, and then not much more to it, and even that is not really feeling super impactful, so not really excited about it, honestly. Arcane Mage, on the other hand, I am very excited to try with the new Arcane Surge build, all the buffs that have been coming through to make all of its spells feel amazing and awesome. All these other schools of magic you're going to have access to, like greater invisibility, you're going to have Ring of Fire, you can get Meteor, you can do so many more things now than just spammy arcane spells. Like Arcane is honestly a spec that's really grabbing my attention. Seems like a spec with a lot of room to grow in, and the unique management that you've got in terms of resources for it. Really excellent spec. Like, this is the expansion, I think, for Arcane Mages, honestly. Beast Mastery Hunter, not really a lot going on for you. You got a couple of cheeky talents that let you just summon a giant spam of beasts, and I mean, other than that, it doesn't feel entirely different than Shadowlands. Maybe with some retuning to make Kill Command more of a viable build option as well. It's kind of like, if you liked Shadowlands Beast Mastery, I think you're really gonna like Dragonflight Beast Mastery. But I wasn't like overly impressed with the nuance or the new things that were coming for it. Unfortunately, I did have a lot of fun with it. It's a feels good spec, really simple. Get your stuff done. If you're not looking for something like overtly challenging, you just want to log on and have a good time, it's going to be a good pick for you. But for me personally, probably not vibing too hard with it, because if I was picking it as the only thing I had time to play, I would get bored of it too fast, and I don't want that, at least for myself. But if you're somebody who just wants to log on a couple times, bang out a few games or dungeons or something, I think that it is a feels good spec. Demonology Warlock, this is one where you're not really getting a whole ton of things that are like new to the spec. You're gonna get more tools to summon more hordes of demons, the same kind of as Beast Mastery Hunter. I don't know what it is, but maybe it's the utility and the crowd control that comes along with Demonology as opposed to Beast Mastery that makes me feel like it's a bit more involved or more intricate and interesting. It's definitely more complicated, right? I think we can all agree Demonology is going to be more complicated than Beast Mastery. So I do think that it's a really fun spec. I haven't seen anything particularly grabbing me for new stuff. Like, I want to see if I could summon a Pit Lord or something for the Nether Portal, but it's like, after that, is there really a lot that's new to it that's going on? There's more damage into your Felguard. It's not really a lot, so maybe it's not standing out like as a superbly like, oh my god, I need to get my hands on this as soon as possible spec. But it's a solid one. Like, it's above average. It's a solid one. Definitely one that's worth your time in terms of fun factor and longevity. You're definitely not going to be getting bored of this spec anytime soon. But you may notice if you played it in Shadowlands that maybe there's not a lot of like new stuff or old stuff brought in with the new stuff to check out as other specs. I think that's what's kind of cutting the S tier above the A tier for me. Destruction Warlock, you're going to do a lot of damage with this spec with the new Havoc talents. You got like a passive Havoc, you got lots of cleave, all of the standard staples of Destruction, Chaos Bolts, Conflagrates, Rain of Fire. Again, same problem as Demonology. I don't feel like there's a lot like new for Destruction specifically within its talent trees. It's just enhancements of an already solid existing base. For me, I feel like it's not as interesting as Demonology, especially when we saw people memeing on Destruction and how easy it was when they got the set bonuses at the end of Shadowlands, and how they're just putting Rain of Fire down and doing a lot of damage. It seems like people maybe got bored of it pretty fast. So for those reasons, I think it's probably coming down in the middle. It's kind of like a feels good Warlock spec. Get in there, get some Chaos Bolts out, get some Conflagrate, spam some Rain of Fire on some mobs or something like that, and you're gonna have a good time with it. But if I was playing it every day, day in and day out, I possibly would get bored of it after a certain amount of time. Now, Fire Mage, this one is, I don't know, but Fire Mage is just the bottom of the barrel for me. It didn't really get anything new. It just got the options, the existing options that it had previously. I was really hoping they were going to turn this specialization into a damage over time effect specialization as it had existed in previous expansions. More focus on Ignite, more focus on Living Bomb, spreading a wildfire onto to your enemies, and I really don't think that that's been accomplished. And I mean, for myself personally, at least, that's what I would like for the Fire Mage. There's not any, it hasn't really changed too much, even not going in that direction either. So I'm really just not interested in checking it out at the moment here for Dragonflight. It's coming in at the bottom. Frost Mage. Now, I normally have a Frost Mage alt in any expansion. The idea of Shatter combo, big crits on my screen, having control and just preventing enemies from moving and watch them have little miserable walking paths with Blizzard and stuff. It's a satisfying experience. It's kind of, for me, the feels good spec for Mage. For that reason, similar to Destruction, but it is one that basically it's going to be like Shadowlands moving over with Glacial Spike and maybe some kind of like Legion-esque talents towards expanding in its talents trees. But it's kind of just like the feels good spec. When I played it in Shadowlands, super fun up front, honeymoon phase. I love this. I'm having so much fun making everything miserable and doing tons of AoE damage, but you get bored of it pretty fast. So for me, I think it's probably like a feels good spec that if you're going to log in once in a while and check out for Mage. But if you're a long-term investment, at least for me personally, I felt myself getting bored of it faster sooner than later, and I don't see it changing much from Shadowlands into Dragonflight for that reason. Marksmanship Hunter, really big hitter, but nothing new. Really nothing new for Marksmanship Hunter. It seems like basically just Shadowlands moving it over. There was nothing that really stood out to me like, oh my god. At the beginning, maybe like the Wailing Arrow was kind of cool, get a silencing effect, but it's not grabbing me at the moment. Now, if you want to play Marksman Hunter because you like getting big crits, go right ahead and play Marksman Hunter and get big crits. I'd really be worried for myself personally of just not having a lot of new stuff to expand into, and having already played it in Shadowlands, getting bored of it pretty fast. So coming in on the bottom at the moment. Devastation Evoker, I really wish they added another layer to this spec. It basically just feels like a pruned down preservation. Like you don't have the echo healing mechanics that preservation has, that takes it a layer above devastation, thinking about what heal you want to duplicate and what effect you want to benefit from. Like that extra layer of thinking is so much fun in preservation. That's why I made the video saying that I'm going to be maining the preservation evoker, but devastation doesn't have that. You got pyre, you shoot out a fireball that AoEs a bunch of stuff. It's going to be a feels good spec, do a lot of damage, I'm sure, but it's missing that extra layer. I almost wish it had like an offensive echo where you could choose a certain spell and duplicate its effect a second time to constantly think about while you're engaging in a fight. But for me, honestly, it's coming in pretty low. Like it's a feels good spec, I think, because it's new. But even still, if you play preservation, you feel like you're pretty much going to get the devastation experience with more. So actually maybe not super excited about the DPS spec of the evoker, but super stoked about the healing one. Elemental Shaman, sorry for you elemental shamans out there, but I feel like Enhancement and Resto robbed all of your cool fun stuff, and they get to try it out and check it out and how it works with their spec, but you didn't really get anything. Still a really fun spec, mixing together all the different elements and trying to get the equilibrium going, where you're weaving in between different natures and fire and frost spells, and Ellie Blast looks like it could be a lot of fun. It's got a lot more depth to it than I think a lot of the hunter specs. Going to be the meatball chucker. It's probably coming in about the middle, maybe a bit more excited about it than Moonkin at the moment, or about equal at the moment. But having seen a lot of it, I think it comes to elemental shaman players what they should expect of an elemental shaman. But when I was looking at the talent trees even just this morning, it was like, it's not really a lot of new stuff in here. Proc ascendances, it's not a lot of new stuff. And like all the new stuff is like very minor stuff, like Mana Spring Totem and Poison Cleansing Totem, and I'm just like, okay, these are very niche situations. I'm going to put this down and it's going to counter a mechanic, and that's it. That's all I'm getting. Not really excited about it, honestly, even though it's a phenomenal spec and it was a super fun spec in Shadowlands. I'm critiquing this based on like what's new and exciting, getting me excited moving to the next expansion. It's not really grabbing me. Shadow Priest, now this one's getting a lot of stuff. You got a whole bunch of nodes at the bottom that have to do with the old gods. Really love that thematically. You have a whole bunch of different priest abilities that you can combine and mix together and concoct some weird thing that you want to go after. Super exciting spec, like really fun spec at the moment, and it's performing really well as well. Super complicated spec, probably even more than Affliction, but like I am pretty stoked about. I want to put it ahead of Affliction. Come on, let me put it ahead of Affliction. Shadow looks like a really good time, feels good spec, super fun and awesome. Lots of new ways of enhancing previously existing abilities, returning abilities, new and old, great merger, and great room for experimentation and growth. That's what I really liked about the Shadow Priest. I honestly wish that like the MM Hunter, the Fire Range, the BM Hunter could have got the same amount of experience that Affliction, Arcane, and Shadow ended up getting, because man, like if every spec was on that level, oh my god, my mind might explode. But those are like the top three that are standing out to me at the moment for the most fun on the ranged DPS category. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. You got something out of it. Now you're gonna have a little bit more insight to it. If you haven't played any of these specs before, you're not starting from Shadowlands or something like that. I do think that they're all pretty fun specs, although some of them are kind of like just feels good specs. Like the BM Hunter is a feels good spec for sure. And they were fun in Shadowlands, but for people who have played it, you probably already kind of like getting bored of it. So again, you're new to these specs, they're going to be a lot funner to you. If you're coming in from an experience standpoint like I am, then they're probably not going to be as exciting as they were before, with not getting too many new things. Other than that, thank you very much for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a thumbs up, comments down below with your thoughts, what's starting to intrigue you, getting your attention, getting your juices going for the next expansion, something maybe we haven't even noticed or we might have missed, so that we can all have as much information as possible when making this vital decision moving into the next expansion. Other than that, thank you very much for watching the video, and I will catch you in the next one.